What's up, everyone? Tara Roberts here with Fantasy Pros, bringing you my top 10 waiver wire ads of the week. But before we get started, if you want a chance to win a signed DJ Moore Carolina Panthers jersey, courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, comment below on this video, and that's it. We will be announcing the winner right here on the channel, so make sure you turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Now let's go ahead and dive right in. Number 10, Jaylen Warren. This was tough to narrow down early because as of the filming of this video, we don't know the severity of the injury to Najee Harris, and there are several great waiver wire handcuff ads like Kenneth Gainwell and Jamal Williams who are hovering right below 50% roster percentage, but Jaylen Warren is the next man up in the Steelers' backfield if Harris's injury causes him to miss any time. He's definitely unproven, so unless we get word that Harris's absence will be significant, don't spend fab aggressively to obtain him. And if we get confirmation that Harris will not miss any extended time, you can skip right over this waiver wire ad and put in a bid on Gainwell or Williams if they're available in your league. Number 9, Kenyon Drake. Many people, myself included, expected Mike Davis would play a larger role in the run game on Sunday because Kenyon Drake's addition within the offense was still very fresh. But it was Drake who saw the bulk of the carries on Sunday with 11 carries for 31 yards and 1 reception for 15 yards. By no means are these very impressive stats, but it's critical information considering that J.K. Dobbins was inactive. It's possible that Dobbins returns next week because he was a game-time decision, but all offseason I've compared Dobbins' potential usage this season to that of Saquon Barkley in 2021. When these young franchise running backs come off of significant injuries, organizations that value their longevity might opt to ease them back into action. And it appears to have worked with Barkley, who had a rough 2021 in a reduced workload, but came back to life on Sunday with over 160 yards. The approach could be very similar with Dobbins. If Drake is the number 2 back in this Ravens offense, he'll see enough usage in tandem with Dobbins to be worthy of a roster. Number 8, Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer was one of my favorite late round draft picks for 2 reasons. The first being clear talent, and the second being he really established himself as the next man up if Keenan Allen or Mike Williams went down. Keenan Allen left Sunday's game with a hamstring injury. Now, Palmer had a modest 3 receptions on 4 targets for only 5 yards, compared to DeAndre Carter, who had 3 receptions on 4 targets, but for 64 yards and a touchdown. But I'd rather bank on the promising second-year receiver in Palmer than a 29-year-old Carter who has never had more than 300 yards in a season. The Chargers play Kansas City next week in a game that could easily be a shootout. If Allen can't go, Palmer could be worthy of a flex. Number 7, Donovan PeoplesJones. Heading into the season, I didn't really expect for Donovan PeoplesJones' skill set to match up very well with Jacoby Brissett. Brissett isn't exactly known for his deep ball, and PeoplesJones averaged 21.7 yards per catch in 2020 and 17.5 yards per catch in 2021. But on Sunday, he had 6 receptions on 11 targets for 60 yards, averaging 10 yards per catch. So perhaps he can mesh well with Brissett if they adjust his role and usage. He was by far the most successful pass catcher on the day, and Cleveland faces a soft Jets defense next week. PeoplesJones is worth an ad. Number 6, Devin Duvernay. Much of the Ravens' offseason was spent wondering who would be the wide receiver 2 in the Ravens' offense, and it looks like Devin Duvernay has stepped up to that role. Targets were spread fairly evenly across Duvernay, Rashad Bateman, and Demarcus Robinson, but Duvernay found the end zone looking explosive and reliable, catching all 4 of his targets for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Ravens want to be a run-first team, but they are starting the season off very similar to last year, where they simply don't have the personnel to make that happen. Even when Dobbins returns, the Ravens will still likely be cautious with his workload. Lamar Jackson will still need to do a fair amount of work through the air, and Duvernay could be an asset on your fantasy roster moving forward. Number 5, Robbie Anderson. 2021 was a very disappointing year for Robbie Anderson, and his worst performance since his rookie season. But oddly enough, Anderson was a very vocal supporter of Sam Darnold and flat out anti-Baker Mayfield. So it's very surprising that he ended up being the big target leader for the Panthers on Sunday, catching 5 of 8 targets for 102 yards and 1 touchdown, more than doubling DJ Moore's fantasy production. And while I don't believe he'll continue to lead the way in target share, it's not something we should ignore. This is a great sign that Anderson will be a solid part of the offense moving forward and can return to a more reliable fantasy production that we've previously known from him. Number 4, Rex Burkhead. The hype around Dameon Pierce heading into week 1 was real, but it was Rex Burkhead who led the Texans' backfield with 14 carries for 40 yards and 5 receptions on 8 targets for 30 yards. Pierce did have 11 carries for 33 yards, so by no means is this Rex Burkhead's backfield, but what I wanted to see and what tilts Burkhead towards a usable fantasy asset is the pass-catching work. Burkhead's 8 targets to Pierce's 1 target sends a clear message. Rex Burkhead is the pass-catching back. And that can be valuable in a Houston offense that will be more productive than many expected. If Burkhead continues to be the second leading pass catcher behind Brandon Cooks, he is worthy of a flex option. Number 3, Zay Jones. This was an incredibly ugly game for the Jags. Trevor Lawrence completed 24 of 42 passes, and while it was ugly, it was enough volume to make multiple Jags receivers appealing fantasy options. We already knew the volume for Christian Kirk would be high, but Zay Jones was a very pleasant surprise on Sunday, catching 6 of 9 targets for 65 yards. It's been a long time coming, waiting for the talent of Jones to finally give output on the field, but Jones had a very strong second half of 2021 with the Raiders, averaging over 10 fantasy points per game in PPR weeks 12 through 18. He can be a solid wide receiver 2 option in this Jags offense that is going to have to throw for high volume and will play from behind for the majority of the season. Number 2, Curtis Samuel. Washington's game was shaky from a real football perspective, but from a fantasy football perspective, there's a lot to talk about here. Carson Wentz did typical Carson Wentz things and was a little careless with the ball while putting up great fantasy numbers. And the receiver who Carson Wentz looked to the most was Curtis Samuel. We've seen success from Curtis Samuel in the past, and when he came to Washington, the expectation was that he would be the wide receiver 2 behind Terry McLaurin. If Samuel can stay healthy, I am very confident he can maintain enough production to be a usable fantasy asset. Number 1, Jeff Wilson. At the time of filming of this video, we don't know the severity of Elijah Mitchell's injury. Regardless, Jeff Wilson is a must-add. Tyrion Davis-Price was a healthy scratch, Trey Sermon is an Eagle, and Kyle Juszczyk has never been used in high volume. Wilson has a history of putting up very solid performances when operating as the lead back. Mitchell was rolled out very quickly, and if this is an extended absence, Wilson could be a top 24 back in a 49ers offense that is very run-heavy. He is a must-add. And that wraps things up for this week's waiver wire ads. And remember, if you want a chance to win a signed DJ Moore Carolina Panthers jersey courtesy of our friends at Pristine Auction, you need to subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, comment below on this video, and that is it. We will be announcing the winner right here on the channel, so make sure to turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.